fact, as Mr. Ramadho said, in such a short while, we've heard so many people speak, we've heard so many different points of view, some congruence, some not congruence. And I would draw attention to those who got a chance to see Mr. Ramadho's article today in the Indian Express, which talked about a new form of Hanseatic League. The fact that the world is moving to some kind of multipolarism, not very neat yet. Some parts are performing, some are not performing. Or as Mr. M.J. Akbar mentioned about, which talked about a new form of Hanseatic League. The fact that the world is moving to some kind of multipolarism, not very neat yet. Some parts are performing, some are not performing. Or as Mr. Akbar this morning also mentioned about India moving from non-alignment to multi-alignment, and not just India. Basically, looking towards, I'm sure others are also, looking toward convergences, looking toward common interest. People mentioned science and technology, doing research together to cope with the global challenges, like climate change. Mentioned about India moving from non-alignment to multi-alignment, and not just India. Basically, looking towards, I'm sure others are also, looking toward convergences, looking toward common interest.
Sound lag.
People mentioned science and technology. Lovely. I was just mentioning about collaborative research in science, and even a small thing like the mics tell us, there's so much more we can do in every field. Climate change, the corals being bleached, all forms of things. Look at the way Maldives deals with climate change by trying to create facts on the ground, raise the height of the islands. We are process of fishing, all kinds of things. So we have brought in so many good ideas. And now we are moving to this 2-hour session. We have 7 speakers, slotted into 3 and 3. The first session has, so to say, all the 3 big players. And because a lot of what your attention will go towards a particular country I shall not mention, let us do some changes in the schedule given to us. And may I request His Excellency Yuri, Materiy, the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Russian Federation to the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka and the Maldives, to give us his point of view. His profile is not yet on the stage. He has served as the Consul of Russia to Vietnam and in Pakistan, and he graduated from the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, 75. So may I request, Ambassador, welcome, आपका स्वागत है.
बहुत धन्यवाद. Good afternoon, honorable ministers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to say that I will not speak on my own. I am speaking for the sake of the government of the Russian Federation. Because my own views I can explain to somebody on the sidelines of this conference. The Indian Ocean region has always played an important role in the foreign policy of Russia. When we speak about the Indian Ocean region and security issues, we always keep in mind the states of this region. And I am glad to stress that we have good relations with all the states of the Indian Ocean region, both littoral and hinterland. Our country's interests in the region are dealt with by the Russian Maritime Doctrine till 2020, adopted in July 2015. This doctrine views the Indian Ocean as one of the regional priorities and formulates the long-term objectives of the Russian policy in the region. First and foremost, the National Maritime Doctrine is aimed at strengthening positive interaction with the states of the region. The National Maritime Policy in the Indian Ocean region also envisages expansion of Russian shipping and navigation, joint activity with other states for the continental shelf hydrocarbon exploration, construction of underwater pipelines, conducting marine scientific research, promoting the transformation of the region into a zone of peace, stability, and good neighborly relations, as well as periodically ensuring naval presence of the Russian Federation in the Indian Ocean, providing security for maritime activities, including combating piracy. It is vital to develop and reinforce dialogue platform and collaborative frameworks, stimulate transparent and inclusive dialogue, and strengthen confidence-building measures. Russia, with its long history of multilateral diplomacy, can provide great support to multilateral dialogue frameworks as well as the broader regional process, which we call the Greater Eurasia Partnership. It is also interesting to look at a potential Shanghai Cooperation Organization's role in the region. With India and Pakistan joining as full members and Sri Lanka being a dialogue partner, the Indian Ocean has now entered its scope. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization could serve as one of dialogue platform and, given its anti-terrorist component, share expertise on fighting non-state security challenges. Now I'd like to make some remarks regarding the issues discussed at the workshops of our conference on terrorism and navigational security, and I'll concentrate mostly on the Russian approaches to various concepts and terms referred to by the previous speakers. In the context of fighting against terrorism, we believe that the central role should belong to the United Nations. The relevant efforts should be undertaken collectively. It is important to suppress the movement of terrorists and bring them to justice on the basis of United Nations Security Council resolutions number 2178 of 2014 and 2396 of 2017. There is a need for states to provide prompt information exchange on this category of person and to simplify mechanisms for their extradition. Efforts should be stepped up to curb the spread of terrorism ideology propaganda, including through the implementation of a global framework on countering terrorism propaganda and United Nations Security Council resolution number 2354. It is essential to implement the relevant Security Council resolution on countering the financing of terrorism, as well as Financial Action Task Force standards. We are committed to the active work with our partners in the Indian Ocean region on the anti-piracy front, including the activity within the contact group on piracy of the coast of Somalia, as well as maintaining the safety of navigation regime in the northwestern Indian Ocean. We also would like to note our close and productive interaction, the unanimity of views towards combating piracy, as well as our commitment to preserving the contact group on piracy off the coast of Somalia, and we believe that it is in our common interest to preserve and further transform this organ, which has significant potential. We believe it is also more beneficial to engage the United Nations to combat piracy and maritime crime, particularly by discussing the possibility of creating a specialized United Nations body to combat maritime piracy and other forms of maritime crimes. The work of United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, UNODC, on the suppression of drug trafficking and primarily Afghan opiates is of particular importance. Also, our main efforts are now focused on curbing the Afghan opiate trafficking along the so-called northern route, which passes directly through Central Asia and Russia. We are also concerned by sharp increase of direct trafficking on the southern route, over 50% of the total illegal export of opiates from Afghanistan, which goes through the western part of the Indian Ocean. Combating drug trafficking has now become the main objective of the United Nations Global Maritime Crime Program, originally created in 2010 to combat maritime piracy. We believe that it is crucial to actively involve UNODC, use its experience and achievements to improve the regional mechanism of interaction. We remain committed to combating crime at sea and in all its forms and manifestations. We are ready to further develop equal international cooperation in this area with our partners in the Western Indian Ocean. In this context, I cannot help mentioning the terrorist attacks in Sri Lanka. We strongly condemn the unjustifiable terrorist acts in Sri Lanka on the 21st of April. We see that the government of Sri Lanka is making every effort to identify the organizers and perpetrators of the explosions in the churches and hotels. Criminals must be severely punished. Sri Lanka has repeatedly been a victim of extremism and terrorism, but the 21st April attacks was the first time when the country faced the threat of international Islamic terrorist organizations. Russia has experience in dealing with this kind of threat. We are ready to cooperate, to exchange experience, and to render necessary assistance in investigating the terrorist attack and eliminating the consequences. As far as we're speaking about terrorism, Russia opposes the substitution of international counter-terrorism cooperation with controversial concepts such as countering violent extremism, which allows the interference in the internal affairs of states under the pretext of preventing extremism for justifying the actions of terrorists and extremists, claiming that they are fighters against repressive regimes, for imposing alien and harmful state and public practices, particularly in the area that are not directly related to international and national counterterrorism security. In this regard, we may, apropos, we may ask ourselves a question. If we speak about violent extremism, then somewhere there should be a non-violent extremism, or maybe a good extremism. And if we employ common sense, violent extremism is a sort of oxymoron like the virtual reality or the live dead. It is important to jointly develop and promote standards for effective cooperation in countering extremism. A good example is 2017 Shanghai Cooperation Organization Convention on Countering Extremism, which, unlike the concept of countering violent extremism, reflects well-defined collective approaches to fighting terrorism and extremism. We invite you to consider the possibility of signing this document, which is open for countries that are not members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. For Russia, the diplomatic solution of the existing security problems is the top priority. We are determined to continue our interaction with all stakeholders in order to collectively build an equal and indivisible security architecture that meets current realities. To our firm conviction, it should be based on the principles of supremacy of international law, non-interference in internal affairs, peaceful settlement of disputes, non-use of force or threat of force. Another challenge is an attempt to recreate old bloc system under the new ban of geopolitical reality, the Indo-Pacific region. The principles embodied in them remain the same: containment and isolation of those who do not fit into military political alliances. These developments increase the danger of reshaping the existing well-functioning systems of interstate relations where ASEAN plays a balancing role. The Indo-Pacific region ideology ignores the objective global process of integration and connectivity, and simply the use of term Indo-Pacific is also impractical, taking into account its geographical vagueness and lack of substance behind it. With regard to Indo-Pacific concepts and strategies promoted for the last 2 years, we have some questions. What will be their added value? How will the new paradigm contribute to solving urgent regional problems, such as combating terrorism, preventing arms race? And finally, what is the geographical coverage, and where has Asia disappeared? Is it drowned in the waters of Indian and Pacific Oceans? The artificial construct of the Indo-Pacific region undermines Asian centricity of the formats that have been created in the region. And the Indo-Pacific region concept clearly competes with the central role of ASEAN. And we do not welcome such kind of theories, partly because we consider it wrong to undermine ASEAN proactive role. So we prefer to call it the Asia-Pacific region, which has become the engine of global economic development and holds a special role in the emerging multipolar system of international relations. It is characterized by accelerated growth and unprecedented in scale integration processes. The Asia-Pacific region has gained a solid experience in cooperation. It is based on the constructive partnership of countries with various political systems and social economic structures. The prospects for dynamic development of the Indian Ocean depends directly on how we can deal consistently and effectively with numerous challenges and threats. Risks associated with terrorism and extremism, conflicts and migration issues remain on the agenda. We see attempts to impose some kind of rule-based order as opposed to strict observance of universally recognized norms and principles of international law, to use extraterritorial application of national legislation, to introduce protectionist measures, and to ratchet up information war that undermines sovereign states. We have observed also that there are persistent efforts to promote this rule-based order. This is an attempt to create a pseudo-legal reality to justify action seeking to contain competitors. These rules often constitute direct violation of international law and meant to replace it. Russia firmly believes that international law and above all the United Nations Charter constitutes the foundation of peace, security, and state-to-state communication in the current era of turbulent changes. Violation of its core goals and principles are resulting in increased tensions and violence in various regions of the world. The expansion of untenable practices of unilateral coercive measures in circumvention of United Nations Security Council. The solution of many issues, including the region of Indian Ocean, lies exclusively through equitable dialogue, political and diplomatic solution with unconditional respect for international legal norms, including respect for sovereignty, prohibition on interfering in countries' internal affairs, and on use of force and threat of force. Altering regional dynamics and growing instability call for closer cooperation between regional states. But it should also involve non-regional actors. Regional situation determines the need for developing common approaches and joint actions in order to develop a multilateral, inclusive, non-confrontational order based on mutual respect and international law, and smaller state strategic independence and sovereignty are to be ensured. For Moscow, the role of fundamental principle of international law, including United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and multilateral institutions, both global and regional, first and foremost the United Nations, is intrinsic in this context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Mehta. Lots of food for thought. Some question came to me immediately, but I shall hold back my job as chair. And Dr. Sanjay Baru wanted to ask the first question. Sanjay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Materiy. I ask this question as someone who has great regard for India's friendship with Russia, and I believe many of us in India do value our bilateral relationship. And right now we have the visit of the Prime Minister in Vladivostok, which reaffirms that relationship. So I hope you don't mind the question that I'm going to ask you. I'm surprised at your observation that the idea of the Indo-Pacific denies centrality to ASEAN in the region, because we've heard, in fact, from speakers from the ASEAN region affirming their support to the idea of Indo-Pacific. But more importantly, as an Indian, I would say that successive governments in India have reasserted the centrality of ASEAN in the process of regional cooperation in the waters between India and Pacific. But while on the one hand expressing this view on ASEAN, on the other hand, you have not mentioned, or rather, sorry, you referred to Russia's interest in Western Indian Ocean. Recently, we had a MOU between the Pakistan Navy and Russia. And we've had recent reports of cooperation between Russia and Iran in the Western Indian Ocean. So my question actually is, what exactly is your strategy for the Indian Ocean? In a sense, it might come as odd that I ask you this question at the end of your talk, but it's not at all clear to me what is the Russian strategy for the Indian Ocean.
No, first of all, I would like to say that, of course, you are right about Indian-Russian cooperation, because we have relations of strategic partnership, and we always, there was a lot of meetings at the highest level and at the level of the foreign ministers, and other delegations are coming to each country. As far as our strategy in the Indian Ocean, I may repeat only the first passage of my, one of the passage of my speech about our maritime strategy. And why I was speaking about Western province, Western Indian Ocean, because it was a question of piracy, and it concerns mostly the countries of this region. That's why I mentioned specifically this region. About ASEAN centrality, I would like to say that our contacts with ASEAN in different forums and bilateral meetings with ASEAN countries shows us that nothing yet is solved, and there is no absolute agreement of ASEAN countries with Indian Pacific Ocean concept, because they have their own concepts, their own constructs. I know Indonesia has some other ASEAN countries, and there is a common concept of, as far as this Indian Ocean, Indian Pacific region is concerned. And also, very important for us to understand, if we speak about Indo-Pacific Ocean, a region, why we didn't invite here Latin American Pacific countries? They are also from Pacific. And why we didn't invite most of the African Indian Ocean countries? Then we shall look at this in such broader perspective. And then also, by the way, somebody said that how this term in the Pacific region was originated. I know one thing, that it is from the biology, because a biologist found that this fish species near African coast of Indian Ocean are the same as in Pacific region near Latin American coast. That's why they said use this term in the Pacific region. And then it came to politics. And one more thing I would like to add. Of course, I am speaking at this conference, very respected conference. But you please don't think that I'm expert on all issues. Thank you.
Ambassador, actually, we tried to get people from the government of Kenya, from Tanzania, and other countries of East Africa. Just for information, the Indo-Pacific term, of course, goes back to Haushofer, who was a German in 1944, well before the American hegemony.
Chile.
Before I come to it, we'll ask Dr. Rajamohan for his question, and then I'll ask you my question.
Ambassador, just, I live in Singapore. I run a South Asia Studies Institute there. President Putin came last year for the summit for the first time. Though Russia has been a member of the East Asia Summit for a long time, it's only recently Russia seemed to show interest in the region. From the region, actually, given the worries about China's assertiveness and the fears about American retrenchment, people are looking for other countries to play a role to stabilize the region. So a Russia that plays an independent role in the Indo-Pacific might be very welcome, because for us, it gives us a more multipolar Asia, if you like. But there is a deeper concern that Russia is actually playing second fiddle to the Chinese, that your alliance with the Chinese actually works against, that it's actually reinforcing Chinese power rather than playing an independent, autonomous role in the Pacific region.
No, first of all, I would like to say I didn't say a word about America, United States and fears. First of all, you please note down. I said I didn't say a word about this. The second thing, our cooperation with different countries, including China, which we have also strategic partnership relations, is just to enforce both Russia and China, and it is bilateral issues which we are going to pursue further. And why you're thinking that our relations with China is enforcing this country against another world, I'm not sure that it's true. Then about our interest in Eastern region. Eastern region, what do you mean by that? We are participating in all formats which are being held in Far East, in Middle East, in Central East, anywhere. And we did not show our interest to this region only recently. It's maybe, as I can remember, during Soviet Union times, and maybe for 30 or more years, we are pursuing this policy to face Asia.
What about the Pakistan-Russia Navy cooperation agreement?
We have military cooperation with all countries. India, Pakistan, Iran, other countries in Asian countries, African countries. It's a question of bilateral agreements. We have a lot of agreements with India on military issues, more than with anybody else, maybe.
Ambassador, a quick last question. You mentioned your relations with Iran, Pakistan, Indian navies. All three are outside your definition of Asia Pacific. The term containment you used, our Foreign Minister Jai Shankar, the World Day Club, 3-4 days ago, and make it very clear. Containment is the term of the Cold War. The American-Chinese containment of Soviet Union is old history. All of us have different definitions. ASEAN has a policy on Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is not a containment strategy, it's a platform for cooperation, which is why Prime Minister Modi is in Vladivostok, because we see Russia as an important player in the Indo-Pacific. Why then still this hesitation? Why are you still stuck on thinking which should have been, what should I say, over in 1990?
Yes, I know that some Indian partners are trying to persuade us about this. But still we have our reservation, which I explained to you. Simply for more vast, for more extensive dispute on this issue,
We'll talk outside over coffee. Thank you. We have been a very, as you saw, you saw many of us have not strong views, but we felt, what should I say, mentally charged enough to challenge you, which is, I think, the purpose, the whole purpose here to all of us put together is exactly to challenge each other's thinking. Can I now request Lalita Kumara Mangalam, our former chair of the Indian National Commission for Women, to please hand over the memento to Ambassador Yuri Materiy. Yeah. Are you? Everyone. Up niche se, can you do it? Wait, good. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. May now request Mr. Y. Hongtian, the Ambassador, Department of Boundary and Ocean Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China. He has previously served as the Ambassador of China to Somalia and the Deputy Head of Mission of Embassy of China in Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm delighted to attend the 4th Indian Ocean Conference and exchange views on relevant topics with all of you. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Indian Foundation for the invitation and the warm reception and hospitality extended to my delegation by the organizers, including the whole country, the government of Maldives. I myself have been working in several countries in the Horn of Africa, on the west coast of the Indian Ocean, for about 16 years since mid-1990s. During my deployments, I worked and communicated with diligent and friendly local people, witnessed the economic and social development and changes of the region, and traveled to some countries, islands, nations, and enjoy the splendid scenery and blue seawater of the region as well. As we gather together today and enjoy the natural beauty of Maldives, good memories are recalled in my mind and provide me new energy. You know, China has 18,000 kilometers of continental coastline and vast jurisdictional waters. The Chinese government decided to build China into a strong maritime country. While pursuing this goal of building a strong maritime country, China upholds 4 principles. China advocates peaceful development, cooperative development, and open development, and win-win development. Second, China calls for properly settlement of maritime disputes through friendly dialogue, consultation, and negotiation. Third, China is committed to maritime cooperation and rules. And fourth, China firmly upholds the unobstructed passage and security of the international shipping lanes. China is not a territorial state of the Indian Ocean, but China has crucial concerns and interests over the peace and security of the Indian Ocean region. We can talk this from 4 dimensions. First, China shares long borderlines in the southwest part of its territory with Indian Ocean littoral states and hinterland states. Second, China has traditional relations and links and exchanges with the region countries. Historically and culturally, China and Indian Ocean littoral states have been in communication for a long period of time. More than 2,000 years ago, the color courageous navigation pioneers from China and Indian Ocean region explore and open up several routes of trade and culture exchanges that line the major civilizations of Asia, Europe, and Africa, collectively called the Maritime Sea Road by later generations, which promote the communication and prosperity among different civilizations, especially and greatly the mutual understanding of the civilizations between China and the countries of the Indian Ocean region. It also plants deeply the gene of openness, inclusiveness, harmony, and coexistence in the hearts of Chinese people and the people in this region. Second, the third, this Indian Ocean is an important trade lane for China. In the context of globalization, ocean has become an important link among states and a pivot of economic globalization and trade liberalization. Now, in 2018, China's total volume of import-export of goods amounted to 2.623 trillion of US dollars, increasing by 9.7%